Good afternoon. Awesome. What a great looking audience. I'm so happy to see all of you here. Welcome to the first real estate symposium organized by BU School of Hospitality Administration. I see a lot of real estate professionals, students from SHA, students from other schools and colleges. Been walking around meeting them. Welcome to SHA and anyone else who's here. I'm also very, very pleased to welcome all the SHA alum that are here, that are serving on the panel. Most of them graduated when we did not have this extensive curriculum in real estate that we have today, but they still made their way. And to me, that's important that we are educating you for a lifetime where you can navigate from one profession to the other and not be stuck to any one place. So I'm very, very happy that they've been so successful. I've been watching their careers. At least 2 of them were here when I was here. Chelsea's last year was my first year, and Priya, of course, graduated yesterday. So thank you for coming and making the time to come and speak to this panel. SHA of today is very different. We've considerably changed our curriculum with a heavy focus on real estate, and hopefully all of you are interested in that. And hopefully these amazing, dynamic real estate professionals will inspire you into this profession. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Professor Kaushik, and I'm going to actually say his last name, guys. Professor Kaushik Vardarajan. He's the moderator for us and director of our real estate and entrepreneurship program. He'll introduce the panel and be the moderator today. So, Professor V.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome all of you to our first real estate symposium and the first panel of the symposium. So as the dean just shared, my name is Kaushik Vardarajan. Many of you know me as Professor V. For those of you who are not at SHA, I am an associate professor of the practice. I lead the real estate program, including the new graduate program in hospitality real estate that we just launched. I also lead the innovation and entrepreneurship program, including the $100,000 hospitality innovation competition that we'll be announcing in a couple of weeks. So welcome to SHA and welcome to our panel. So I'm going to start off by very briefly introducing every member on the panel. If we went into detailed introductions, we would take 2 hours. So I'm going to keep it really brief and let them talk more about their experiences as we get into the questions. So I have Zach Demuth, who's Global Head of Hotels Research at JLL, as you can see. Spencer Davidson, who's Senior Vice President at Hunter Hotels. Priya Tewani, who is Real Estate Analyst at Sonesta. Dave Ruger, who is Vice President of Investment at SHA Hotels. Chelsea Salamone, who is Senior Director of Acquisitions and Development at Standard Hotels and Bunkhouse Hotels. And John Jaeger, who is Senior Managing Director at LW Hospitality. So welcome again to all of you, and thank you for joining us. So without further ado, let's dive into some questions. I do realize, and the panel knows, that the audience here is quite diverse. Not all of you are from the hospitality school. So before we dive into a detailed discussion, I think it would be great for us to kind of lay a framework for what we mean when we say hospitality. So Zach, maybe you can, in your view, when we say hospitality, what do we mean? What kind of components do we include when we say hospitality?
Wow, that's a big question to start. I mean, from my perspective, so I graduated in SHA 2011. As Arun said, very different school then. I think hospitality today can mean a widespread of disciplines. Most often we talk about it in the context of hotels, but it really can expand broadly. In my line of work, both currently and prior to joining JLL, worked across kind of the entire travel landscape. So that includes cruises, airlines, booking engines, so how guests get to hotels or get to whatever accommodation they're staying with. Today, I think it includes alternative accommodations, so not just Airbnb, but sort of like Airbnb-like affiliates, and really an entire landscape. So I would say hospitality, in a very brief definition, is really anything that uncovers the kind of experiential or service economy.
Great, thank you. And so, you'll see us talk about hotels and resorts and golf courses and cruise lines and convention centers, theme parks, baseball stadiums, the entire senior living facilities. It's really kind of, that's what we say. We include all of that in hospitality and more. So we just wanted to give you some perspective on that. But let's dive into it. I think we are really curious to hear kind of what your journey was from the time you graduated at SHA. So maybe we'll start at the other end with Jonathan. Can you just walk us through, in 2 minutes, walk us through everything you've done in the last 15 years since you graduated from the program?
2 minutes, that's a challenge, but I will try. So I was very fortunate. I graduated from SHA in 2008 and had the good fortune of being Rachel Rodzinski's first hire from BU at Pinnacle Advisory Group. So I started there really learning grassroots, how to do a market study, how to do a feasibility study, how to look at a piece of real estate and analyze, what type of hotel will fit here, what does the feasibility of that hotel look like, how to create a pro forma and forecast, for what that hotel can achieve. So I worked with Rachel for about 6 years, 2008 to 2014. And then I moved to New York, joined my current firm, LW Hospitality Advisors, and almost 10 years later now, which is crazy to say. But when I started, we were a pretty small company, about maybe 12 or 13 people. Today we're about 40, and we have 3 different verticals. We have the group that I lead, which is the feasibility, the valuation, kind of short-term consulting engagements. We have an asset management group, and then we have a data analytics platform called LARC, Lodging Analytics Research and Consulting, which I hope Professor V is working into the curriculum here at BU, because it's a great resource for market-level data. We're up to about 60 markets across the country. So I could obviously go into a lot more detail, but I think just long and short of it is I was very fortunate to get into this space because, as the dean mentioned earlier, when some of us were in school, there really wasn't a program. There wasn't anyone like Professor V spearheading, the path from being a student at SHA into working for one of the companies that are really well represented on this panel here with these folks, that we all do something very different in the space, but all related. And frankly, when I was in your shoes, I didn't even know that these jobs existed. And so the program that we have here today, I think, is excellent because you're getting exposed to the potential and what's out there in hotel real estate. And I can tell you, it's been quite a journey. Learned a lot, and it's a fun career path because, at least in my role, you get to work with all different types of people.
I'm going to come back to you on that.
Okay, all right,
We'll have
sorry.
30 minutes to talk about how much fun it is.
There should be a light that blinks once I hit the 2-minute mark.
We have to cue the Oscars music next. So. Chelsea, can I just tell us about what your journey has been like since you graduated?
Sure. Mine was a lot different. I was a little more like a ping pong ball. I came into BU. I think I had 2 majors before I even started. None were hospitality. I was pre-med then pre-law before I even got to campus. So I had a very different idea when I was 18 years old what I would be doing today. I think that's quite normal and something we'll probably all express to you at some point today. So when I ended up in hospitality, I was almost a junior, and I kind of just stumbled upon it. I was one of the oddities who liked the financial accounting courses. And kind of just struck an interest from there. And actually, John was one of the first people in the industry that I had met via someone named Barry Bloom and Rachel Rodzinski. And I ended up interning with Pinnacle. I was the second BU, I think.
That's right.
Rachel is from Cornell, and she definitely lets everyone know that. So from there, to be honest, I remember I had an interview with her. I sat down before I started, and I said, I'm really interested in asset management. I can't wait to learn asset management. She started laughing because they did not do asset management. So I think back a lot on that time. and how understanding the different verticals within the real estate industry and hospitality, let alone hospitality, and how it just takes time to kind of learn what those are, where you fit. Ergo, my career, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out within the real estate kind of sector where I fit. So when I graduated, I actually chose to do a management training program, and I ended up with Hilton in Washington, D.C. at a 1,070-room hotel as a front office manager. I use that for street cred almost every day. That whooped me into shape, and from there I kind of said, all right, I had my experience in operations, and I think I still want to move towards the real estate side. So then I came back to Boston and had worked with Pyramid, at Pyramid Hotel Group at the time. Now I think they're Pyramid Global, as an analyst on their acquisitions team. That was kind of my boot camp into the more analytical real estate side. And then from there, I had joined Kimpton, and then from Kimpton, joined Standard. And I've been with the company for almost 5 years now. And I forgot to mention at Kimpton, Dave and I work together. So,
Yes, we do.
so the world of hospitality is quite small. So yeah, my career path was a lot about just trying to go with the wind as much as possible and find what suits me best. And I'm still working through that, but I was very open to opportunities and moving and trying new things.
Thank you, Chelsea. Dave?
Yeah, I, like Chelsea, kind of moved around a little bit. I graduated in 2008, which was, the economy was falling apart at that point. I moved out to San Francisco. I got a job with a company called HVS, or Hospitality Valuation Services. By the end of '08, everything had kind of fallen apart, and I got laid off. So I moved back to Boston, and then I ended up working with Capital Hotel Management out in Beverly, doing hospitality, government consulting, and asset management. So what's government consulting? It was working for the National Park Service, the U.S. Air Force, the Forest Service, and any sort of project that had some sort of hospitality component, lodging, food and beverage, bowling, etc. Ultimately, that was something that I just didn't want to pursue long term, so I started looking around. A friend of mine introduced me to the folks at Ambridge Hospitality, and I ended up moving down to Dallas, Texas. Worked on their acquisitions team for about 3 years, looked at all sorts of deals, portfolios, single assets, limited service, full service, resorts. Yeah, really enjoyed that side of the business. And when I came into school, throughout high school, I took a ton of languages. I took Spanish and French through university level, took a little bit of Japanese. And so I had always wanted to do something international, and I didn't really know kind of what that meant. And as I went from job to job, I was like, it'd be really cool to do hotels internationally. And I got a little bit of that at Ambridge, working in the Caribbean. And so I got an opportunity to work for Starwood Hotels at the time, which was up in Stamford, Connecticut. And I got a job on their real estate team, focused mostly on Latin America and Europe, and some of the resort properties in the U.S. Loved it. And then Marriott came in and bought the company, and a lot of us on the real estate team had a pretty strong feeling that we were going to get laid off because for those of you who know your hospitality history, Marriott spun off their real estate arm in the early 90s, which is now Host Hotels and Resorts. And so we started looking for jobs. And I jumped at that point, did a startup. I attempted to raise a GP fund, general partner fund, with a partner of mine. Ultimately, we failed after a year. We didn't have the track record. A lot of these groups are looking for 25 deals done, and we thought we were going through a vehicle called an emerging manager fund, which we thought literally meant emerging, so maybe 10 or 12. But like anything in life, right? I mean, the good comes with the bad, and even the bad, there's a ton of learning, right? It's all about your perspective and the angle you take on it. And so after that, I jumped back to Starwood, which at that point was Marriott. Finished off, I started working as a contractor, selling some properties down in Latin America. And then at that point, I knew it wasn't going to be a full-time job, so I kind of looked for jobs at that point, and that's how I ended up at Kimpton, and Chelsea and I worked together. And at Kimpton, I worked there for, I don't know how many years, 3 years, I guess. And then I was focused on the eastern half of the US, eastern Canada, and the Caribbean, and then COVID hit. I got laid off again. And then just tried to figure out, what I wanted to do next, and kind of like, where life was going, and took a little bit of time to like figure that out. Did some consulting work, tried to start a management company. That also did not work out, and then so I ended up joining a management company, and now I'm at HEI, working on hotel investments.
Quite a journey, Dave. So much to learn. Priya?
Mine's a lot more short and sweet. I graduated last year. I originally started at Sonesta as a data analyst for the innovation strategy team. After that, I wanted to pursue more of my degree, which was real estate. So I moved over to the real estate team at Sonesta, and now I'm focusing in feasibility and investments, mostly for the select service brands.
Thank you, Priya. Spencer?
Definitely a lot more short and sweet. I'm Spencer Davidson. I graduated SHA in 2012. Similar to both David and John, I was entrenched in operations as a product of SHA. We didn't have a real estate program. Real estate was always, the shining Ferrari in the room who everybody wants to drive and be a part of, but you have no clue what it really is. And candidly, we weren't really taught. We had one professor who kind of did a quick sidetrack on it, which definitely intrigued me. But we had the benefit of graduating with 800 hours of operations experience, because no matter what side of the industry you go to, it's important to have the basic fundamental understanding of operations to get to the other side. And to get to the other side was eventually where I wanted to go. It sounds like everybody on this panel was fortunate enough to have a job coming out of college. It's not always easy, whether it's GFC in 2008 or just difficulties in the job market today. I took kind of a second choice job within the food and beverage industry, doing operations, knowing that owning a restaurant or being on the real estate side of restaurants was something that I could see myself doing. Hotels were still my number one love and just didn't really work out from a timing perspective. So I did a quick stint in restaurant operations in New York City for Be Our Guest Hospitality for about 6-7 months, and finally got a call from LW Hospitality prior to John joining, when we were about 6 to 8 people, and said, hey, you want to come join? And I dropped everything and I went and joined, spent 2.5 years there doing valuation, feasibility, and appraisal work strictly for hotel properties. And again, learning how to value real estate, and not only real estate, but in my niche, hotels. So after 2.5 years, as a lot of people will tell you, the consulting shops are an amazing starting point, but certainly don't have to be your ending point. But you have a variety of connections to a ton of different sectors within the industry, and I kind of chose brokerage from there. So I joined a company called C3 Real Estate Services, doing distressed hotel sales. After a 1.5 years there, I was poached by the CBRE hotel team out of New York. Spent 7.5 years there doing hotel transactions across the spectrum, as much as $5 million, as much as $500 million, in all different states across the country. After 8 years there, and kind of next steps for me were getting out from behind the CBRE monster shadow. Joined a boutique firm where I'm at right now called Hunter Hotel Advisors. We're based in Atlanta. We're about 15 to 17 brokers strong. We also run a very big conference as well. It's one of the major hotel industry conferences. But starting their New York City office, so new territory for them, and we're currently growing and building that as well. So I've been there for 2 years right now. Entrenched in the brokerage world, and we sell hotels all across the spectrum.
Thank you. Zach?
So I graduated, as I mentioned, SHA 2011. I think sounds sort of similar to Chelsea. I really didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily. I actually came to SHA as a transfer student initially. I came to the School of Journalism, and I love to write, and actually now bizarrely do it in my current role. I realized that writing for a profession was not something I was necessarily interested in. But I loved hotels. When I was growing up, I traveled a lot, and when I came to the hotel school here, I was just really amazed that there was a whole business behind it. And I think, similar to what many of the panelists have said is, I think at the time when I was a SHA student, it was really heavily about operations, whether that was hotel operations, food and beverage, or sort of the ancillary businesses. I didn't necessarily know at the time or even understand that hotels are in and of themselves a business. So there's the hotel business, and then there's the business of hotels, and they can be different and are different. But so when I graduated SHA, I went to work for Marriott. At the time, I was in their management development program. I think they call it a Voyager program now. I actually took a little bit of a different route. It wasn't operations focused. I did revenue management. I think revenue management, I know it's still taught here at SHA. When I was a student, there was one class, and for whatever reason, I just really grasped onto it. I thought it was a really interesting way to sort of be tied to the hotels themselves, the actual operations, but sort of in a more financial analysis kind of way, and really understand the way hotels operate, the way they make money, the way they might lose money, how they attract guests, kind of the entire life of a hotel on a day-to-day basis. So I lived in various parts of the U.S., Southern California, Miami, New York, and others. Worked my way up through Marriott, and then I was always really curious. I candidly never had any interest in going to real estate. I didn't really understand the way hotels operated from a real estate perspective. It wasn't until almost my 7th or 8th year at Marriott, and I think Dave mentioned this, Marriott had spun off, or well before I was there, spun off their real estate to Host, and I remember sitting in a meeting, and it sort of hit me that the way hotels inherently are set up, you have an owner, you have an operator, you may have a brand, so you may have 3 different constituents who have vastly different goals and vastly different interests, and usually, if not always, it's the owner that wins out, right? And that's the real estate side. So I really became interested in understanding this relationship for various reasons, because I like to go to school and various things. I went and got my master's at a different hotel school, and that I won't reference. And I decided to come back, and I worked for Marriott post-Starwood acquisition, and then I really wanted to get into real estate. So I joined JLL just over 2 years ago. And the reason I decided to go into research is it felt very much similar to revenue management to me, whereas revenue management, you're trying to focus on maximizing the value of an existing hotel. What I do in research is trying to maximize the value, the real estate value of a singular hotel, or in most cases, a portfolio or collection of hotels. So for me, it's the same skill set that I had, or that I use with Marriott, and that I've taught at SHA and other places, just for a different purpose. So I really enjoy kind of telling the story behind a hotel, behind why a hotel is performing or not performing, behind why a market is performing or not performing. And so for me, it's understanding, like to Spencer's point, really understanding the way a hotel operates and why it operates that way, and then be able to expand on it from a larger perspective.
All right. Thank you. So I am almost missing having a board behind me that I can write things on, but because I can't, there are 2 things that come to mind when you just 2 things to focus on. One is none of them had a very clear path to where they are today, right? Nobody just got out of college thinking, I know exactly what I want to do, and this is a straight path for me to get to where I am today. None of them had that. The second thing that you'll notice is they all somehow seem to have met each other, know each other, either here in school or during their careers. They all intertwined. Even though the hospitality industry overall is about $5 trillion, it's a really small industry of people, so just something to keep in mind. So we have people here from consulting firms, from brands, from management companies, transaction advisory, research. So Chelsea, are there other segments of the industry that we are missing today? Because our podium wasn't long enough, but are there other sectors that students need to be aware of within our industry?
Plenty.
Can you just give us quick examples of what we are missing?
So this is actually usually one of the first conversations if I'm talking to a student, I usually have to explain where we are and what we all do with kind of transactions and hotels at the core, whether it's a hotel that's being built or a hotel that exists today. There's a whole 360-degree circle around them with different perspectives, different verticals. Some touch most everything, some touch a few things, but all deals usually take at least 5 of those verticals, whether it be ownership groups, and within there, there's a number of different types of ownership groups, whether it's really private equity or REITs, public REITs, consulting, advisory, research can come from lots of different angles. The brands, operators, they can be one and the same or separate. And then there's the building side of things, which, I don't think we talk about as forward-facing as much, but the construction end of things and the design end of things, that's a huge component to making hotels successful and profitable. So there's a number of different specialties, and I think that was, for me, one of the hardest elements to navigate, because there's so many opportunities. It's tough to sort through where to start, and it's also tough when you're in positions and you want to get to somewhere, and knowing, am I in the right spot, and understanding what it takes to get there. And I think it's different than what you might assume, that you can learn a lot from being in point B and observing point A rather than just being in point A. I work typically to value and understand transactions, potential hotels, existing hotels, a lot of different scenarios from an ownership's perspective, but I'm not on the ownership team. I work with construction, development, design, but I'm not on their team. So at a certain point in your career, you have to start narrowing down kind of what your specialties are, and recognizing that now you need to partner and network with people in other specialties that are good at what they do, because you'll need them to be successful in the end goal. So there is just an infinite number of positions and companies out there, and I think that I always say, in my opinion, the best place to start is with the opportunities that you can cast your net the widest, because that will give you the most flexibility in taking your next step after that.
Thank you. So, Chelsea, Spencer, I'm coming to you now. Chelsea highlighted all of these different opportunities in the industry, but are there certain kind of key skills and qualities that you need to be successful in this space?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a big one. Necessarily self-starter, right? You have to have the right attitude. You have to come into it with confidence, but it's okay to know what you don't know. So be open and be vulnerable as well, especially coming into the job world. Whether you're new, experienced, it doesn't matter. I've been a broker now for a better part of a decade. Is it where I wind up in the future? I don't know, but I could tell you, in my network of space where I'm dealing with consultants, legal, owners, buyers, sellers of all different spectrums, you have to keep yourself as open and opportune as possible. But again, I think it comes back to understanding the fundamentals. And in the brokerage world, at least, I get the benefit of, teetering between the analysis side. So a lot of it is financial analysis and finding out what the property's worth, but then I get to go sell the property. Right? It's not $1 million listing necessarily, but it could be. So, there's a little bit of fun to that as well. So you really, depending on which avenue you want to, entrench yourself in within the hotel space, you tailor your skill set around it, but don't be afraid that your skill set today is your skill set that you'll wind up with, because there's a ton of opportunity and you will continue to grow throughout your career. And I'd like to think all of us on stage are young enough that there's a lot of growth and development for us as well. So we're still kind of in a semi-discovery phase.
And Jonathan, kind of continuing on that part, can the same set of skills help you be successful in each of these roles? How does it change from one to the other?
I think it absolutely can. I think what Spencer was just saying, is I would echo, almost all of those same thoughts. And to me, if the question was, what's one skill you need to have to be successful in real estate, I could probably come up with 10 or more. But one thing I would say, and to call out James and Anatole here in the room, who actually did an internship with us, and maybe you guys would agree, maybe you wouldn't, but to me it's attention to detail. And let me give you an example. So we worked on an appraisal of a property in Denver, 1,000-room hotel, massive, massive property. We're doing an appraisal for the lender, right? So a bank is lending hundreds of millions of dollars on this hotel. And there was someone on the underwriting team, not with our company, but someone on the underwriting team that basically misread the management agreement. And so management agreement, you had a management fee, base management fee, and then an incentive fee, which is basically once the owner gets a priority return on their investment, the manager gets basically the incentive, so a percentage of excess cash flow. And just by missing the formula on how that incentive fee is calculated, you're talking over probably $20 to $30 million difference in value. Think about that. Think about that's real money coming out of someone's pocket. So again, that's just one example, but I think it gets to the attention to detail because what we do, and again, I think what Professor V mentioned about how everything we do is intertwined. I think I've worked with everyone on this panel in some capacity, and the industry, the real estate part of hospitality is truly very small. So, one mistake like that could really hurt you, hurt your future career. So, we kind of joke that some people, you're taking accounting or finance classes, and I feel like people either love it or you hate it. And if you hate it, the real estate side might be something, right, that's not for you because of the attention to detail and the importance of the numbers, right? Even what Chelsea's doing on the brand side, she's working with numbers every day. Same with Dave, same with Priya, same with Spencer. Literally everyone, Zach, on this panel is dealing with numbers that can have huge swings on what the outcome is of a transaction, of a refi, whatever it might be. So to me, it's just that attention to detail.
Completely agree with attention to detail, but just kind of pivoting on that, because I think this is an important, you made a very controversial statement, Jonathan, as always.
I try.
So I think, Dave, this is something that I know a lot of students here will have questions about. If they are not experts at accounting or finance, like they don't wake up at 6 in the morning. Actually, none of the students here wake up at 6 in the morning, but they don't wake up feeling this amazing love for accounting or finance. Can they still be a part of the real estate industry?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I do wake up at 6, by the way. I have a 2-year-old. Yeah, the answer is yes to that. I think a lot of us know a lot about a lot of different areas, right? And I think part of it, Spencer said it earlier, right? You got to realize you don't know what you don't know, and then you have to be humble enough to just try to figure out a path to get more knowledge, whatever that is, right? And a lot of that is asking thoughtful questions to maybe your boss or your peers, or your professors. A lot of that is doing your own research. Like for me, for instance, I literally have a whole arsenal of textbooks. I still, to this day, if I don't understand a concept, I'll reference one of my textbooks that I have. And I have multiple textbooks on the same subject matter because not everyone teaches, the same subject the same way. And I think it's okay to realize that you just don't know what you don't know. And going out there, putting yourself out there, again, just asking the right questions and just trying to figure out to where you need to go to get the answer that you need. I know that's a little bit opaque.
Sorry to cut you off. I just want to clarify. I was not a fan of accounting. I did not like accounting. I got a B+ on my last final in accounting, and I begged Professor Quagg at the time to let me take home that final. It was the best grade I ever got in the class. And I left BU and wanted nothing to do with numbers, but it kind of followed me and came back to me, and through hard work and realizing what I had to do, I got to a place where I understand the numbers. Glad to say, but don't let that deter you from the real estate industry. If you're a hard worker and it's something that you want, as long as you're in an environment that can get you there and that you're comfortable with that, you can get to where you need to be.
Okay, great. So, Dave, firstly, I think when you spoke about your career, I think it was really important for the students to hear because we talk about how we usually tend to speak about people look at senior positions like leaders like yourself and they just think you've had a smooth ride all along, but knowing that you've had challenges to deal with is really important. And I think that's something that we work towards preparing our students for. So maybe we'll pick a couple of people here, but we'll start with you. Just when you have challenges in your career, how do you deal with them? How do you get beyond them?
Yeah, I mean, I think challenges, it depends on the magnitude of the challenge, right? But I mean, generally speaking, I think losses have the opportunities to be wins, right? And it's about the lens that you take when you're looking at whatever you're focusing on. Like for instance, I tried to raise a GP fund with a partner of mine. On paper we were great, right? We both had great educations. He Cornell Hotel School, Harvard MBA. We both had a decent deal track record, but like at the end of the day, the people who are funding these funds, right? A lot of private equity funds and vehicles that invest capital, hedge funds, right, which is not real estate related, and general private equity, not real estate private equity, they're funded by pension funds, right, as just some of the larger groups. And at the end of the day, if you don't have the track record they're looking for, you're not going to be successful. But what I learned through that process is A, who the key players were, B, I met a lot of new people, C, just trying to like set up a vehicle itself, like working with the legal team, trying to figure out what our strategy is, what our pitch is, how to make a pitch, right? Going out there and meeting with people, presenting deals, getting shot down. Like all of that sounds bad, but like at the end of the day, it's a win because, I walked away a year later more confident than I was previously, and I realized that this is probably something I want to pursue in the future, but I just need to keep being diligent and doing what I do, right? And I think generally speaking, like if you put yourself out to the universe will give you something good back. And I mean that in life, not just job-wise. So, just go for whatever you want to go after, work-related or otherwise.
Anybody else have a perspective to share?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's also similar to what Spencer sort of said is like it's okay, I phrase it, it's okay to not know. And that can be with relation to a specific question, subject. For the record, I was terrible at finance and accounting as an undergrad, and I think I'm pretty good at it now, but it took me a long time to figure out how to be good at that. And I think the failures or mistakes along the way was just because as younger in my career, I was maybe not as humble and aware of what I didn't know and was very quick to assume I knew things. But I think not knowing is like a really important skill. And I think I was taught early in my career by a boss that I still keep in touch with is saying you don't know something, but then getting back to a person is like one of the best answers you can give, whether that's in a meeting with your peers, your boss, et cetera. I had a lot of missteps along the way in my career, or seemingly missteps at the time, but I think, again, it's being open to having other opportunities. To Dave's point, like what might appear at the time to be a failure or, again, a misstep can actually lead you to an amazing path. And so I think being open to opportunities, in our space, whether that's being open to moving geographically, which I know is not for everyone, but I will say for me, having had the flexibility and the opportunity to move to different geographies, even though at the time maybe I didn't think that was the right step, or it felt like a lateral move, or it felt even like a downgrade, really opened me up to learning so much more. Not only about different geographies, but different asset types, et cetera. And I would say the other big thing is when you think about failures or missteps or setbacks, and Professor, you mentioned this, is like your network is so important. And I would say your network today as students is all of you, your classmates. I mean, I have literally worked for classmates, I've hired classmates, and I've had classmates help me get jobs or network, so I think like that is so important. And then as you get in your career, I mean, yes, hospitality is a massive industry, but it's also really not. I mean, all of us sort of knew each other or know each other from various paths before having sat up here, before having been on various panels together. And I would say that will become increasingly true in your careers. So when you think about places where you may end up and you didn't intend to, like having a network is so, so important. And that really starts as students and we'll just continue to build from there.
want to switch track and come to Priya now.
Well, I also wanted to add to that with a lot of the challenges, you kind of get stuck in the moment, whether you're looking at a bunch of numbers. And you can always take a step back and take some time away from that challenge, and you'll come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. You'll be refreshed, and sometimes it's a lot simpler than what you thought. And if you come back to it and you're still confused, you could always reach out to mentors or alumni or your network, which is why your network is very important.
So Priya, I'm going to stay with you. When I started looking for jobs when I was in college, we didn't have LinkedIn. We had barely invented electricity. So, I know looking for jobs now is very different than it was many, many years ago. So you have a lot of students here who are graduating in the next semester or so. Being the freshest one out of college, can you just talk to us about how you started the process of looking for jobs, networking? When did you start? Can you just walk us through what your process was like?
Yeah, so I went through a lot of interviews. I think the entire last semester I went through interviews. And then Sonesta themselves, I went through 5 or 6. It's really important to be polite, to be on time, to be respectful. And even if you don't get the job, to go back to them and be like, tell them what you liked about the company, what you enjoyed. And you can always say, I really enjoyed being at your company. And interviewing with you. If you have a job that will fit me in the future, or if something comes up, then please reach out. And if you do get a call back, and even if you don't get a call back, be sure to write thank you emails, because it's really important to show that you're respectful.
Yeah, just given the size of the industry that we've been talking about, just real estate, so many different roles, so many different companies. Was there a process you followed for kind of picking a path within that?
I actually applied to so many roles focused in real estate and finance, and you could always apply to a company and move to a different role, which is what I did at Sonesta. I applied as an analyst, but I started as a data analyst. And it's a lot easier to move within the company than you'll realize, because you'll make mentors, you'll make friends.
And so all of you are in leadership positions now where you're hiring. What does the market look like today? What are the roles like out there today? And with Spencer, we'll start with you, because you said you're expanding your team now.
Market from a job market perspective?
Yes.
Yep. It's a good question. We don't have a laundry list of open positions. When I say we're kind of expanding our team, we're looking for other verticals within the hospitality space. So adding a capital markets division, which is somebody who places debt, is a great example. But Hunter is a company that's 30 plus years old, but we're very young at heart. We are continuously growing and adding select pieces, whether that's additional brokers across the country. So it's tough to say. I haven't candidly had a ton of exposure directly to new applicants. Obviously, a lot of people starting to reach out, and I'm always happy to get on a call and talk through my experience or directions that we can point.
Even just generally across the industry, what are you seeing in terms of sentiment?
I think sentiment is largely tight, right? Everything's expensive right now, and that includes new talent as well. People are looking to generally cut costs across the industry, and whether you're seeing that from layoffs from some of the more massive tech firms, even down to the hospitality space, where at least from an operations perspective, in hotels, labor is very difficult, labor is challenging, and that kind of funnels all the way up to the companies that own these hotels and real estate as well. So I'd be curious to hear what the rest of the panel has to say, but from my knowledge, it feels like it's pretty tight out there right now.
Jonathan?
Yeah, to put a stat on it, and Zach, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what his job is, but transactions, so hotel transactions in the United States, 2023 is down 50%, 50% from last year. Zach, am I right?
I think you're understating, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there, yeah.
Depends on the brokerage firm.
Depends, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, depends on the firm. So let's put that into perspective. That's half of the volume that lenders worked on, buyers, sellers worked on, brands worked on, brokers worked on. Everyone in our ecosystem, right, and this is not, finite, right? Because we all do different things. And as the industry changes, real estate is cyclical. I'm sure you've heard this before. You change what you do, but that's a massive number to think about how the industry is performing now. 2023 was a very interesting year. Now, 2022 was a banner year, right? It was a record year for a lot of things. So I think last year, 2022, we saw a lot of hiring. And now, as we're getting towards the end of 2023, I think a lot of companies have slowed down and sort of rethought, okay, what are our needs, right? And some companies think short term, some companies think long term, right? Because as real estate is here right now, next year it could be up here, and the year after, and we've got a lot of debt maturities coming. We've got interest rates. I'm sure you've heard about all these things, basically double what they were a year and a half ago. So we're all trying to, I think, figure out where we are in the market. But I think for those of you graduating in May, it might actually be a really good time, because hopefully we'll be coming out of this rut that kind of the industry is in. I'd be curious to get other folks' thoughts on that. Because 2023 was definitely not, or has not been, a great year for a lot of companies, and like Spencer mentioned, a lot of downsizing has happened. But heading into next year and the year after, I think we might see an upswing there. So I don't know if folks agree. I would love if anyone disagreed with me as well.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree, but with a lot of the distress that we're seeing, or distress coming, in the service industry, at least from the brokerage side, we have the benefit of not owning hotels. So, I've worked on 3 or 4 transactions this year where during the marketing process, a major water pipe has burst, or there's been a flood or a fire in a room. That doesn't keep me up at night. No offense, it's the owner's problem. That being said, interest rates going up, as horrible as it is, and companies not making as much money, is causing people to essentially play by new rules. And because of that, there will be increased levels of pressure to sell, and sell at more market rates. So as it gets more difficult for a lot of these companies, my line of business should, in theory, be getting a lot busier. And we've started to see it. We started to see cracks of it. I'm hopeful by May that we'll come to a more normalized period of playing by the rules, if you will. Right now, the waters are certainly not clear, and everybody's been waiting for this wave of perceived distress. But when it does come, and a lot of people are selling, the transaction market will heat up, and Zach's research, which is now more than ever more valuable, will become increasingly valuable. And brands, whether it's Standard or other, or Sonesta, are going to be looking for more opportunities. So we could be coming into a really busy time for the real estate industry. Although high level it's perceived as distress, the good news is hotels are still one of the most highly regarded, well-yielded asset classes around.
Yeah, and I also think, going back to the kind of earlier question around different sides of the real estate industry, I mean, to Jonathan's point, transactions this year have been terrible by all measures, down significantly, challenging to get done for a variety of different reasons, rising debt costs, capital market volatility, et cetera. But with that, there was multiple sides of the industry. On our side, one of our leaders has said over and over that now is a historically great time to be a hotel lender, because you can lend money at yields that are equivalent to what equity yields used to return, right? So now that doesn't mean that there's an abundance of debt out there. It's quite expensive, and who necessarily has to borrow? But to Spencer's point, some people have to, because your yields are maturing, or your loans are maturing. So I think it just depends what side of the industry you're looking at. I think overall it's been a really challenging year. I would agree with Jonathan that our expectation over the next 6 to 12 months will get better, and as things get better, as transactions happen more fluidly, that naturally means that companies are going to hire more, because when a transaction happens, there's so many different players involved. Right? You have the brokerage firms like us, you have lenders that come to the table, you have equity partners that come to the table, sometimes you have brands come to the table, sometimes operators come to the table, developers, right? So you get this whole value chain, and that requires people across. But I would say even in times right now when things are, in some cases objectively not so good, there are participants that are coming to the table with more frequency. And I think that goes to kind of thinking about your career, and maybe you want to be in real estate. Real estate's very broad. What does that mean right now? And maybe you want to be in development. Now is a challenging time to be in development, but maybe you take a what seems like a pivot and go into valuation to start, which is a really great place to learn a ton about how hotels get transacted, how hotels get built, how they get underwritten. And from what we're seeing on my side, a lot of hotels are getting underwritten today. It doesn't mean they're getting built, it doesn't mean they're getting transacted, but people want to know what they're actually worth. So when this potential distress comes, what does that look like? So I think when you think about your career kind of in the short term, yeah, maybe you have this goal of being in the hotel development world, but today that's a challenging place to be in certain markets. So maybe you take a different sort of step and get exposure to something that will ultimately get you to your long-term goal.
Also, I just wanted to share that we have Eva and Jenny in the back. They're going to walk around with mics. If you have questions, please raise your hand and one of them will bring you a mic. So while we're seeing if anybody has questions, let me ask you this. All of you travel extensively. Every time I go on LinkedIn, Zach, you're in a different part of the world. All of you are constantly traveling. One of the things that students care about these days is work-life balance. Is that even exist in your lives? How do you manage that? How do you make it work? Priya, will start with you because when you start, everybody expects you don't deserve work-life balance, right? So talk to us about what your life has been in the last year.
Well, starting off with deals coming in, you do have to work a bit of odd hours, but some days are more busy than others. You just have to have good time management to schedule your work and also take some time to focus on your hobbies and what you love to do.
And Dave, you have a young one at home? I think you sleep while you're driving, right? That's when you catch up on sleep. So.
Yeah, my work-life balance has changed a little bit. I would say in the beginning, it's like studying for final exams, right? I mean, you really got to put the work in to learn as much as you can, because really, like candidly, you're learning throughout your career, because if you're not learning, then you're just going to get sidelined. But especially in the beginning, I mean, there's just so much to take in conceptually, then market data and just everything else that comes along with that. So for me at this point, I do have a work-life balance, but that's because I make it a priority. And to your point, I mean, it's really a game of time management, being efficient with your time, not looking at your phone, getting up at reasonable hours, working till when you need to. And I think it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're gonna have to work very long weeks, and there are other times where you might be able to just kind of pull back and, work until you need to and not necessarily burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say none of us up here work at investment banks. So if you want to work at an investment bank, you're probably going to be working, 80, 90 hours plus a week. Yeah. That's no question. Within our industry, I think we have the benefit of, really tailoring your schedule around your specific industry sector. If you're working obviously on the West Coast or with, foreign capital, your hours could be a little bit different. I'm personally of the mindset that it's about the quality of hours you put in, not the number of hours. So, if you're working a 9 to 6, 9 to 7 job, which is, fairly normal, if you're really dedicated, very engaged, you're not pulling out your phone, scrolling through Instagram or Snapchat throughout the day, and you are entrenched in, what you're doing, and you see the value in that, and you also feel like you're growing from it, I'm not going to call you at 10 o'clock at night and tell you have to do this unless we're running a fire drill. That's not, I don't believe that it makes people better. I think everybody up here on stage would agree the same. There are going to be those select days where you're going to have to work longer hours, but it is about work-life balance, and I think the balance makes you a better worker. So if you don't have that balance, like a lot of people in the investment banking industry or other, you could easily get burned out. I don't believe that the hotel industry is one of those industries that we pride ourselves on killing people, for lack of a better term, to extract the most out of them. This is a people business first and foremost, and we need to understand that it's important to take care of your own people, and that's new hires all the way up. So that's kind of my personal view on it.
Yeah, I also think we're an industry that's built on passion. I mean, the reality is whether you're in real estate or many of you have worked in hotel operations. I mean, it's not necessarily an easy business to be in. To Spencer's point, it's a people first, literally, business, and it's also a business you have to have some passion to be a part of. Whether that's passion for, helping others, servicing the guests on the real estate side. I mean, there's a lot about hotels that are very nuanced, that are very different from other asset classes. And again, nothing against those. I have a lot of colleagues that work in office space and industrial, but I think there's a pretty big difference between selling a hotel versus selling an office space. And I think a lot of that has to do with passion. We're also a business that's built on, our business is driven by people traveling. So inherently there is a travel component. And, Kaushik mentioned, I travel extensively for my job. I don't think of my travel as, yes, it is work, but I'm also very passionate about it. So it does, in some sense, objectively, my wife complains a lot about it, that, I'm not at home, so therefore I must be working, which is true, but I think I'm also very passionate and enjoy a lot of what I do, and so I don't necessarily look at it that way. But I recognize it's not for everyone, and I think just if you don't like to travel or you don't want to be away from home, doesn't mean you can't be part of this industry. I think, all of us on this stage have different ways of going about work-life balance, but I also think it's not an investment bank environment. You're probably not going to be working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, but it doesn't mean there aren't long hours, and it doesn't mean that you have to have some commitment, and I would say, to me, that commitment has to manifest itself in a passionate way. And so I love talking about our industry. I travel because I enjoy those conversations, but it can lead to like a lot of time away from home, time away from friends, family, et cetera. Again, not a requirement, but something that, like, for me, it's a lot. Both domestic, global, you think about all the different ways. But for me, it's, we're an industry that's built on passion and hospitality in its truest form.
If I may add just one thing, the biggest commodity that you have in life is your time. It's the only thing you can't get back, right? So it's really about being as efficient as possible in all areas, and I think that looks a little bit differently for everyone, but it's working hard, it's studying hard, it's carving out time for yourself, right? It's going to the gym if you're into that. It's really doing whatever you need to do to create that healthy, balanced life, and I do think that, again, it ebbs and flows for sure, but it's literally the only thing in life that you can't get back is your time. So just got to make sure that you're spending every moment doing whatever you do, and making sure it's worth it, right?
One quick thought on this is what I would say also is to be present with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, you could be at work, but if you're not focused on work, you're not being productive at work, right? And so to kind of echo some of the thoughts that were said, you've all been in rooms and talking to people when they're looking at their phone going like this, and it's like, no, you're having a conversation, right? So I try to make a concerted effort, right? When I'm out to dinner with a client or lunch or something, or I'm in a meeting, phone goes in my pocket and stays there until it's over, right? Yeah. Be present, go all out and do what you're doing at that moment as best you can. Yes, I might have 20 missed calls, when that meeting's over, but then you call people back when you can. So that's just one thing I would say is so important that, for any generation, but just be present. And I think at the end of the day, you'll find maybe you could work less hours if you're present and you get as much done as you can while you're there.
20 missed calls.
Any questions from the audience?
Huh?
It's 20 missed calls.
I feel it vibrating. That's
And just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm a junior studying hospitality administration with a with a concentration in real estate development. And I was wondering, so while in college, what experiences do you recommend getting both during the school year and over the summer before graduation?
Zach, we'll start with you. Some thoughts?
Again, I think it depends, obviously, what you want to do post-graduation. I assume most of you, or many of you in this room, want to work in some form of real estate. I still think there's no replacement for working in operations in a hotel or food and beverage environment. Again, not saying you have to devote an entire summer to that or want to do that post-graduation, but my personal perspective is my experience having worked in hotel operations. I worked at the Four Seasons Boston while I was a student here. There's really no replacement for that. Actually, we were talking about it in one of our real estate council meetings. I think now in my role, I work sometimes with hotel owners and asset managers. And if you've never actually stood at the front desk in 11 or 12 o'clock at night and had to physically walk a guest, a guest shows up they have a reservation, and you don't have a room for them, and you have to be the one to deliver that news, there's no replacement. Someone can't tell you what that feeling is like. Like, having done that, I use that experience, and I've used it in my career at all levels. Again, I'm not saying that you have to want to be a GM or anything, but I really think there's no replacement for that. And then in terms of like trying to get into real estate, I would say having done an internship, like a full summer internship at, either one of the brokerage houses, a company like Jonathan's, one of the brands in their feasibility department, something where you have access to either underwriting hotels, valuing hotels, either for transactions or debt, just something to understand kind of like the baseline of what goes into it from a financial perspective, being able to read a hotel P&L, being able to relatively quickly articulate, is a hotel doing poorly, is it doing well, where are the opportunities, things like that I think probably most of us on this stage take for granted at this point. I mean, those are like really hard skills in the sense of not challenging, but like hard skills to have, intangible skills to possess that will set you apart, right? Because those are things that we all do with relative ease now, but they are major requirements. So I would say, like, again, some root in operations just so you get the way hotels operate, and then something where you can clearly tie to financial accounting background.
Okay. Any other questions? And Eva, if you want to come up front in case somebody has questions.
Hi, my name is Ella. I'm actually a student at Northeastern, but I'm currently working for the Four Seasons right now on my co-op. And I guess kind of what you just discussed, but what kind of made you transition from the operational side to kind of the like real estate side? Because I'm still kind of figuring that out for myself.
Dave?
Yeah, I've literally every job since probably 13 years old I've done in hospitality, except for one that I can think of. I delivered pizzas, I made pizzas, I did catering, I washed dishes, I did hotel accounting, engineering. And then candidly, I didn't even know this world existed. A good friend of mine in school, I graduated a semester early, he did consulting. And I was like, wait, you get to travel and you get to expense stuff? And you get to fly on a plane? I was like, that sounds great. And so I ended up, and I was always very good with numbers. And so even before that, I ended up working for a group out of Cambridge that was doing restaurant feasibility. So literally the financial analysis behind, like, does it make sense to open this restaurant or not? And so I had a little bit of a taste of the world, but I didn't fully grasp, how large the real estate side was. And then kind of after I pieced it together, it was just a natural fit. And then, as you go along in your career, I said earlier, I kind of bounced around a little bit. And part of that is that wheel that Chelsea brought up earlier, right? I mean, hospitality real estate is kind of like a pinwheel. You have ownership groups, you have lenders, you have brands, you have management companies, you have asset managers, you have lawyers, you have designers, you have architects. And as you kind of like work through the real estate side, like even there, you kind of eventually hone in on what you like and more importantly, like what you don't like.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that. Going from operations to real estate or vice versa is a jump. It's a jump.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's not easy. When I had my first job as an analyst, they were giving me a chance. I was like, I'm giving you a chance. But it's a jump. And I think that the best way to prepare yourself for a jump in your career, which to be honest, may happen 6 times in your career. It may happen 0. I mean, I'm expecting to have a jump, a couple more times before I retire, unless I can get on TikTok or something. But, I think that keeping your connections, even your peers, especially your peers, because those are the people that you'll rise up with in this industry. Keeping your connections, even if you're in a place you're not sure about, and constantly networking is really, really helpful, because that one conversation that you had somewhere, even if you have their email contact information, go back to them. Say you visit that city again, you meet up with them, or you have some sort of random something in common that you can create and cultivate that. It's really helpful. So I think that going with your gut is always most important, because if you don't, you'll end up in the place that's right for your gut. If you do, you're there already. So just knowing that you can always make that jump, that meeting people is very important. Those are two things to make sure that you keep reminding yourself of. Because your career could be, 40, 50, 60 years long if you want it to. You have a long time to kind of figure things out. And I think that once you start narrowing down and kind of climbing up in your career, being different and having those different experiences actually makes you more valuable. So trying to ease that stress, trust the process, and what John said, staying present and really acquiring the skills that you're learning in your day-to-day, those are really important things.
Okay, those very wise words. I just realized we're out of time and Alex is ready to throw things at me. So with that said, I'm going to thank all our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us.
Question over there? I think we got one more question.
We'll have
Go for
networking. You can.
Can't say no now.
Okay, go ahead. Just quickly.
One more.
I know where you go to school, so.
Good afternoon to everyone. I actually had two questions, but I'll ask only one. Yeah. So what are the recent, my name is Sonesta. I am a graduate student at SHA. So my question is, what are the recent trends in hospitality real estate sector and how are they affecting the future investments for it?
Really? That's your one quick question? Devansh? So I don't know if there is an easy answer for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Chelsea or Dave?
I'll take that one. I would say
Tell us the trends, David.
Yeah, no, I would say, I mean, the trend is that transactions aren't happening because interest rates are going up. Generally speaking, I think the hospitality industry has become more bespoke. You know, people want curated experiences, and you kind of see that across the industry. You know, interesting food and beverage concepts, a great rooms product. They're not necessarily into cookie cutter as much. And not to say that cookie cutter doesn't have a place, right? Because it definitely does. But I think generally speaking, people are paying more because they want to have a more unique, curated experience across the board.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because I spend probably 95% of my day talking about 10-year, 20-year trends, it's you guys. So the Gen Z generation, you're up and coming into the tourism industry. And the millennials are the biggest spenders in it right now, but in the next 5 years will shift to your generation. So you'll start to see the things that you like becoming the most important trends in the industry. So with patience and time, that means that your opinions will matter most, right, in those next 5 to 10 years. So it kind of happens on a cyclical basis, but you all are going to be, are heavily focused on now in a futuristic sense, but will in the next 5, 10 years will be kind of it.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Chelsea. Again, so with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you, Jonathan, Chelsea, Dave, Priya, Spencer, and Zach. Let's give them a round of applause. They're going to be around for the rest of the evenings if you have opportunities to network with them. If you have a 6-part question, again, Devansh. So, but thank you, everyone, for being such a great audience. Thank you.